Welcome to Rill Riddles, a podcast series looking at the many riddles, myths and mysteries of Rill. An audio investigation into Rill's unusual history. From the weird and wonderful to the spooky and surreal. Join me as we venture back into Rill's past. This episode: The Mystery of the Resurgam.
This episode of Rill Riddles has a nautical theme. However, we will not be concerning ourselves on Rill seafront or its golden beaches, but what was once under the sea, and a fascinating story linking Rill and the development of the design of one of the first submarines. A tale of both imaginative invention, mystery, intrigue and sadness. We begin our story back in Victorian England with the birth of George Garrett, an inventor who not only was a man of God but had an infinity with the sea. By all accounts, he was both a brilliant but a little eccentric. George William Garrett was a British clergyman and inventor, and was a pioneer of early submarine design. George William Garrett was born in Lambeth, London on the 4th of July 1852, the third son of John and Georgina Garrett. His father was curate of the local St Mary's Church. In 1857, his father took up a position in Penzance in Cornwall, and it is in this nautical environment that young George Garrett may have first become interested in the sea. In July 1861, after John Garrett agreed to take over a post in Moss Side, Manchester, George Garrett attended the local Manchester Grammar School, then studied chemistry and general science at Owens College, which later became Manchester University. He was appointed assistant master at the Manchester Mechanics Institute and subsequently obtained a BA degree. His family history was of course steeped in that of the church, and in 1873 he passed the Cambridge Theological Examination and became a curate in his father's parish. His passion though was for science and mechanics, and in 1877 he invented a diving suit, demonstrating it to the French government. This led to an interest in the possible military application of what at the time were known as submarine boats. His ideas sprung from an event in the Russian-Turkish War of 1877, where the need for a vessel that could go under protective chain netting to destroy warships was identified. With this project in mind, he set up a company, Garrett Submarine Navigation, and raised £10,000 for the build of a submarine from local Manchester businessmen. The Reverend's first submarine, often called the Curate's Egg because of its shape, was a sort of Victorian X-craft. Water ballast was taken on and then expelled by withdrawing or pushing a cylindrical plunger. In theory, the sub would move alongside the hull of an enemy ship, whereupon its crew of one would place his hands in a pair of external leather gauntlets and deploy a magnetic mine. This first design was tested in Liverpool docks on the 18th of July 1878. In practice though, she wasn't much of a weapon, so Garrett thought again, and thought big. His second submarine vessel was named the Resurgam, Latin for I shall rise again. It was built by J.T. Cochrane & Co. at Birkenhead for a cost of £1,538. It measured 45 feet long and weighing around 30 tons. It was powered by a fireless steam engine designed by American engineer Eugene Lamb. She carried 3 crew members. She was to be armed with recently developed fish torpedoes. Her construction was of iron plates fastened to iron frames, with the central section of the vessel clad with wood secured by iron straps. The steam engine provided enough steam to turn the single propeller for up to 4 hours at a speed of 2 or 3 knots. The boiler featured a retractable smokestack. The fire had to be extinguished before the craft would submerge, or it would exhaust the air in the submarine, but enough steam remained in the boilers for travelling several miles underwater. The boiler was stoked while she was on the surface, and then the fires were damped down and she submerged using diving rudders. However, this was not very practical. The boiler full of superheated water made conditions inside the submarine very hot indeed. Conditions on board the sub were nightmarish. The fireless engine was sealed in preparation for submerging at an intense heat. Space was at a claustrophobic premium, and only when the boat's candles flickered and died did the crew understand that it was time to surface, open the hatch and let in some fresh air. After trials at Wallasey, records claim that these early trials went well, even though Garrett on one day was forced to surface next to a passing schooner and asked the skipper for directions back to Liverpool. The captain took one look at the pioneering submariners and promptly told them, "You are the 3 biggest fools it has ever been my misfortune to encounter." Garrett was sufficiently confident, though, to demonstrate Resurgam to the Royal Navy off Portsmouth. The Navy had recognised her potential and had offered Garrett £60,000 if she passed marine trials. He resolved to steam there, an act of bravado that would prove disastrous. Mr. Cochrane implored his client to transport the sub by rail, but Garrett wouldn't budge. And on the 10th of December 1879, the Resurgam, crewed by Garrick, Jackson as skipper and Price as engineer, set out for Portsmouth. During the voyage down, mechanical problems arose. The propeller shed a blade, forcing Garrick to put into dock at Rhyl along the North Wales coast. For 16 weeks, repairs and modifications were made, until at last, at 10 p.m, on a dark and cold February night, Resurgam put to sea again. Now though, she was under tow from a steam yacht called Elphin, which Garrett had bought to provide occasional comfort for the submarine's crew. Disaster struck when Elphin itself developed mechanical problems with its engine. Garrett and his crew quickly transferred to the Elphin to assist. However, the sea conditions worsened. Resurgam's hatch, like that of any sub, could not be sealed from the outside. Stationary and rolling in the water, she was vulnerable to the now worsening sea conditions, and it was not long before she was swamped. With sea water now entering the open hatch, the weight was too much for the tow rope and it snapped. The Resurgam disappeared beneath the waves, sinking off Rhyl on the 25th of February 1880. The fate of the Resurgam was sealed, but what became of George William Garrett? The Reverend Garrett's brainchild was no more, and his fledgling submarine company was broke. But he didn't give up. In partnership with the Swedish tycoon and arms dealer Thorsten Nordenfeldt, Garrett designed submarines for the navies of Sweden, Greece and Turkey. After the wrecking in 1887 of one of his submarines bought by the Tsar of Russia, George Garrett called it a day, and his life as an inventor came to an end. He tried to return to his work as a curate, but the church did not welcome him back. Upset by this decision, he resolved to start a new life in America, where he made a disastrous investment in a farm that was ruined by a harsh winter. Next, he joined the US Army, and, as Corporal Garrett, he fought in the Spanish-American War. Having survived combat, his extraordinary life came to an end in New York on the 26th of February 1902. He was just 50 years old and penniless. For Garrett's submarine, its final resting place lay undiscovered and a mystery. The submarine was rediscovered in 1995 when she was caught in the nets of a trawler owned by Colwyn Bay trawlerman Dennis Hunt. A local diver, Keith Hurley, was employed to free the snagged nets, and on inspection Mr. Hurley realised that the trawler's nets were not snagged by any marine obstruction, but a large cylindrical object. Upon further investigation into the area's history, they realised that they may have found the missing submarine, the Resurgam. The site of the wreck covers an area over 900 feet. The Resurgam's hull is intact. Although partially damaged, it remains at risk from illegal diving and trawling.
This unique footage of Resurgam was shot shortly after she was found, encrusted in barnacles and badly damaged by passing shipping, but her distinctive shape remains visible, basically two cones either end of a cylinder. Here's what appears to be remains of the steel banding that surrounded the timbers on the cylindrical hull section. And here, an exhaust pipe, again encrusted by marine life. And this is the conning tower, which, as you can see, reveals that Resurgam is lying on her side. It was here that the Reverend George Garrett would gaze out across the seas that he hoped to dominate with his new breed of underwater menace. Hard to believe that this was the access point for three brave crew who would endure infernal temperatures when the submarine was sealed and submerged. Resurgam, I shall rise again, it means in Latin. Sadly, it wasn't to be.
4th of July 1996, it was designated a protected wreck under the Protection of Wrecks Act. The vessel is believed to be the oldest surviving submersible. Since her discovery, the conning tower steering wheel has been broken and portable items have gone missing. In 1997, a project called SubMap was undertaken by the Archaeological Diving Unit to study the wreck site. Over 100 volunteer divers, coordinated by the Nautical Archaeology Society, surveyed the structure of the hull and the colonising marine life around it by using remote sensing equipment. The results of the SubMap project have been published as a comprehensive digital archive. The wreck is currently protected against further corrosion by anodes that had been attached to the hull. Plans to raise her have so far not been fruitful. However, the story of the Resurgam has not ended there. Its Latin name, meaning I shall rise again, has indeed, in a way, come true. Resurgam's story came to the attention of trainee shipbuilders attached to the Camel Laird shipyard in Birkenhead. To keep the name afloat, an exact replica of the vessel was built by the trainees and was put on display at Woodside Ferry Terminal on the River Mersey in March 1997. However, its prominent position on a seafront with extreme weather conditions began to take their toll. But Resurgam was saved once again when the replica was refurbished by students of the North West Maritime and Engineering College in Birkenhead in 2009, and it is back on display at the Woodside Ferry Terminal overlooking the River Mersey. Although the original wreck still lies off the coast of Rhyl, and any hope of its retrieval are now sadly gone, at least we can visit its replica and marvel at a unique piece of engineering and inventiveness of a bygone era. A fascinating story from Rhyl's maritime history.
You have been listening to an episode of Rhyl Riddles, a podcast created, edited and produced by Glenn Mitchell. Join us again for another journey back into Rhyl's past. Subscribe, share the link to this podcast and comment. Let us know what topics you would like covered in the next episode of this series.